we had encountered the first fertilization by ICSI, not while we were doing for a purpose ICSI, we were doing SUSI. And when you do SUSI, it may occur that you damage the membrane of the oocyte.
The terminology of making babies is, to say the least, a little overwhelming. The scientists and physicians rarely use the 3- and 4-letter words we hear in the movies. And when the words are short, like ICSI and SUSI, they're usually acronyms for sophisticated procedures that boggle the mind. ICSI is a technique developed by Dr. André van Steirteghem of Belgium. It's considered by many specialists to be the most exciting advance in the field of reproductive technology since the introduction of in vitro fertilization or test tube babies. It's a technique that could help couples where the male has a low sperm count, and that represents about 40% of all infertile couples. What in vitro fertilization does is bring together sperm and eggs in a test tube. If fertilization takes place in the test tube, the fertilized egg is then implanted in the woman's uterus. Although this helps many infertile couples, it hasn't been much good for couples with low sperm count. With these sperm, just getting them in the right neighborhood doesn't seem good enough. But ICSI may change that. With ICSI, a doctor selects one sperm and injects it directly into the egg. Dr. van Steirteghem.
The step we have taken is that the fertilization, all the different steps that have to occur for an oocyte to get fertilized have been bypassed. And you bring exactly the genetic material of the sperm directly into the inside of the oocyte.
With normal fertilization, the sperm attaches itself to the outside wall of the egg and goes through several transformations before making it into the center. With the single sperm injection, that process does not occur, and that may be why scientists have been reluctant to take this step. With no animal model available for this technique, Dr. van Steirteghem says his clinic's biggest concern was potential abnormalities in babies born by this procedure.
It's the first time that in fact you are bringing the gametes so close together because you take a single spermatozoon and you inject it, and there was concern that maybe you are taking away one of the natural selection barriers, although this has never been proven, but this was the reason why, and I think it's quite an invasive procedure, and so I think we were concerned and we wanted to give the best information to our own patients, but also to the patients who will be treated in other groups. I think we felt the responsibility of gathering the data on the safety of the procedure.
Close to 200 babies have been born by this technique at Dr. van Steirteghem's clinic in the last 2 years. And the good news is that they're healthy. Just 4 of them were born with abnormalities, a rate you would expect under normal circumstances. What really has the medical world abuzz is the technique's success rate. Dr. van Steirteghem says in 800 tries, the pregnancy rate was 35%. The live birth rate was 26%. He says those figures are far better than any other technique used for men with low sperm count. Today, most of those men must give up on the idea of fathering their own child and turn to donor sperm programs. Dr. van Steirteghem says this technique gives those men new hope, and he even predicts that donor sperm in these cases will soon become a thing of the past. But just how fast this technique will catch on in countries like Canada is difficult to measure. Bernard Robert is a professor of pharmacology and therapeutics at McGill University. He's also the president of the American Society of Andrology.
He's bypassing all the biological mechanisms. He's bypassing the fact that the sperm has to swim, that to get to the egg, has to get through all the layers of the egg, has to enter. There's another major question, and that is what happens to all the membrane elements when the sperm enters? How does the sperm begin decondensing when there's still all the membranes around the sperm? So he's treating it as a black box. It's like magic. It's wonderful that it's worked, but it's something that I think would have a very hard time getting routine acceptance here because there's so many things we don't understand.
While Robert says we don't know enough about why this technique works, he admits that it's hard to ignore the fact that it is working. And because it is a breakthrough for a great number of people, he says more and more centers around the world will start introducing this technique. But not without hesitation.
There'll be hesitations because we don't understand the mechanism, and I think people may legitimately raise questions about what is happening. There are also going to be hesitations that are going to be relating to cost. My understanding is that the few places doing it in the States are charging $10,000 a shot, which is about twice what they're charging for IVF. It's understandable because, as you heard and as you saw, it takes an incredible amount of expertise. The equipment is not that expensive, but the trained personnel to do this and the amount of time to do this requires a level of expertise that we don't have, so these people have to be paid a lot, and that will engender some expenses.
So while many people in the field of reproductive technology are hailing the arrival of the single sperm injection technique, and while it may be one of the most promising developments in the last decade, there are still many unanswered questions. Questions that will determine how soon this technique will be used on a wider scale and just how accessible it will become. For Radio Canada International, I'm Bob Babinski in Montreal.